Welcome to the orientation for potential applicants to the competition for the Center for Dispute Resolution in the Office of Special Education Programs and the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services at the U.S. Department of Education. I am Carmen Sanchez, a project officer at OSEP and the competition manager for this competition. The assistance listing number, or ALN, is 84.326X. I would like to go over some caveats before diving into this webinar. First, the intent of this presentation is to provide guidance only, and the information contained in this webinar provides a general summary of the information contained in the notice inviting applications and the application package. Furthermore, it's imperative that all prospective applicants read the entire notice, the entire application package, and any additional relevant information. In addition, applicants are encouraged to listen to a more general webinar entitled Applying for Office of Special Education Programs Discretionary Grants for an orientation to the process overall. The webinar can be found at osepideas.work.org, the same location that houses the link to this recording. Please be aware of application timelines. The notice was published in the Federal Register on February 3rd, 2023. All applications are due on April 4th, no later than 11:59 and 59 seconds in the PM. Note that this is Eastern Time, and determine what that time would be in your time zone accordingly. We will discuss the implications of a late submission later in the webinar. The application package, available in grants.gov, contains the most comprehensive information on how to apply. In it, you will find a Dear Applicant letter from Larry Wexler, Director of OSEP's Research to Practice Division. You will also find the Notice Inviting Application, or NIA, and invaluable information about the grants.gov system submission procedures. The package also contains the detailed selection criteria that will be used to judge the quality of the applications, as well as general information and Word versions of all required forms. Please read the package carefully. In this section, we will go over program information, the purpose of the program, who are eligible applicants, funding levels, and whether multiple applicants are allowed. Let's start with the purpose of this program and this competition in particular. The ALN 84.326 program encompasses a variety of technical assistance and dissemination projects focused on improving special education and early intervention services nationally. The purpose of the 84.326X project is to create a center on dispute resolution to improve how disputes in special education and early intervention are resolved, and through the provision of technical assistance that improves dispute resolution systems and informal methods of dispute resolution. OSER staff will determine if applicants are eligible. Applications from ineligible applicants, such as from individuals, will not be read. Eligible organizations are state educational agencies, or SEAs, state lead agencies, LAs, under Part C of the IDEA, local educational agencies, or LEAs, including public charter schools that are considered LEAs under state law, institutions of higher education, IHEs, other public agencies, private nonprofit organizations, freely associated states and outlying areas, Indian tribes or tribal organizations, and for-profit organizations. If you are a nonprofit organization, you can demonstrate your nonprofit status by the methods described in the notice inviting applications. The total available funding for the competition is $750,000 for one budget period of 12 months. The award can be renewed each following year if the project makes substantial progress, but for no more than 5 years or 60 months total. The notice inviting application lays out what the department expects the Center on Dispute Resolution to accomplish. I will discuss shortly the expected outcomes, but in general terms, it will provide universal and targeted assistance nationally to state education agencies, early intervention lead agencies, and OSIP-funded parent centers to support them in working with local educational agencies, early intervention service providers, and parents to improve the implementation of a range of dispute resolution options, including methods of dispute resolution required under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and early resolution practices. In this section, I will go over some more specifics about the competition. This includes expected project outcomes and activities, application narrative and selection criteria, and the application requirements and general requirements. So, what does the notice say about what the center should do and how it should do it? There are 5 expected outcomes, which are broadly increased body of knowledge and dissemination of knowledge on exemplary dispute prevention and dispute resolution practices to meet the needs of parents in resolving disputes, including culturally and linguistically responsive practices, and the interaction of IDA dispute resolution systems with dispute resolution systems required by other federal laws protecting the rights of children with disabilities. An increased capacity of state educational agencies and lead agencies to support local implementation of effective and equitable early resolution practices to resolve disputes and thereby decrease requests for state complaints and due process hearings. Increased capacity of SEAs and LEAs to collect, report, and use high-quality dispute resolution data. Improve capacity of LEAs and IES providers through their work with SEAs and LAs to equitably implement a range of dispute resolution options, including methods of dispute resolution required under IDA and early resolution practices. Improve capacity of OSIP-funded parent centers to provide culturally and linguistically competent TA to parents on a range of effective dispute resolution options. Please note that the notice inviting application goes into far greater detail on these outcomes. The information in the application narrative should be focused on how the applicant proposes to reach these outcomes. The notice also lays out in general terms the kinds of activities and the nature of the activities that are likely to reach these outcomes. The services that the project proposes should include services that expand the knowledge base of evidence-based effective dispute resolution practices that are culturally and linguistically competent. They should also provide universal and targeted technical assistance to multiple audiences and develop a high-quality, useful, and relevant products to meet the needs of the intended audiences. Again, the narrative should indicate how the proposed services would accomplish these tasks. The notice lays out how the application narrative should be divided into 5 sections, which correspond to the selection criteria. These sections are significance, quality of project services, quality of the project evaluation, adequacy of resources and quality of project personnel, quality of the management plan. I will go over each of them and point out in general terms what the narrative should address in each section. Please read the notice carefully since the information contained in the notice is significantly more detailed. Please also note that reviewers will be making judgments as to the quality of the application's responses to these sections, so simply restating what is in the application package will be insufficient. In the significance section, the narrative should provide broad information on how the project will address gaps or weaknesses in state or local performance under and compliance with dispute resolution requirements, improve outcomes in dispute resolution systems, how the project will increase understanding of the interaction of IDEA dispute resolution systems with dispute resolution systems required by the federal laws, and how the project will improve communication between parents and education professionals. Please note that there's much greater detail in the notice inviting applications, and this section should be read carefully. In the quality of project services, the application should provide information on how the project will identify the needs of the intended recipients for TA and information and ensure that the services and products meet recipients' needs, how the project will be based on the IDEA requirements for dispute resolution systems, current research, and also make use of evidence-based practices, how the project will develop products and provide services, including its proposed approach to universal and targeted TA. Please note that there's much greater detail in the notice inviting applications, and this section should be read carefully. In the quality of the project evaluation, applicants must provide an evaluation plan that is connected to the project logic model and which measures the quality of the project services and the extent to which the project meets its targets. Lastly, the evaluation plan must contain formative and summative evaluation questions connected to the proposed logic model and conceptual framework, measurement of fidelity of implementation and project outcomes, strategies for analyzing data, timeline for conducting evaluation, sufficient funding and staff allocation to work with a third-party evaluator. Please note again that there is much greater detail in the notice inviting applications, and this section should be read carefully. In the adequacy of budget and quality of project personnel, the application must indicate that the applicant and any partners have adequate resources to carry out project activities, that the proposed costs are reasonable, and how the project will encourage employment of people from underrepresented or underserved groups, such as people with disabilities. This section amplifies the required assurances that the applicant will take reasonable steps to employ people with disabilities. In addition, in this section, the application must address how key personnel have the required qualifications and expertise to carry out project activities. The application also requires a separate budget narrative and an ED 524 budget form. And in this section, applicants are encouraged to make judicious references to the budget narrative and budget forms. In addition, resumes of key personnel can be included in the appendices, but applicants are encouraged to point out the most salient qualifications here. In the quality of the management plan, the narrative must show how the project will meet outcomes on time and within the budget, and how contractors and key personnel will be managed. The management plan must also include information on how the applicant will ensure that a diversity of perspectives are brought to bear in the operation of the proposed project, including those of parents, teachers, the business community, a variety of disciplinary and professional fields, recipients of beneficiaries of services, or others as appropriate. In addition, the management plan must lay out how the project will ensure the quality and relevance of project services. Please note that personnel loading charts, management timelines, and other ways of representing the management plan can be added to the appendices in order to provide a more detailed information. Please note that again, there's much greater detail in the notice inviting applications, and read this section carefully. As part of the process of making funding recommendations, external reviewers will judge the quality of the application using selection criteria for each section of the narrative. Each application can receive up to a total of 100 points, with the significance section receiving 10 points, the project services section up to 35 points, the evaluation and management sections each receiving up to 20 points, and the budget and personnel section up to 15 points. The application must contain information on the sub-criteria within each selection criteria, and applicants are strongly encouraged to read those carefully when preparing the application narrative. In addition to the narrative, there are application requirements. First, the application must contain a logic model and conceptual framework for the project, and personnel loading charts, timelines, and other means of illustrating the management plan are encouraged. The logic model and management plan materials should be placed in Appendix A. However, all other materials such as resumes and letters of support should not be in Appendix A, but can be placed in other appendices. The applications must include in the budget travel funds to support the project director's attendance at one annual meeting sponsored by OSEP, and an additional 2-day trip to attend an OSEP-sponsored meeting, an annual 5% set aside to support emerging needs and to be determined in collaboration with the OSIP project officer, a high-quality website, which includes a public posting of project progress, and an assurance to assist OSIP with the transfer of pertinent resources and products, and to maintain the continuity of services if needed. Please note again that there's much greater detail in the notice inviting application about these requirements. Lastly, all OSIP-funded projects must indicate that they will make positive efforts to employ and advance in employment qualified individuals with disabilities, and that the project will involve individuals with disabilities or parents of children with disabilities in planning, implementing, and evaluating the project. In this section, we will go over how to submit an application, submission tips, and SAM registration, ineligible applications, and other application tips. Please note that applications must be submitted electronically in the grants.gov system. If there are reasons why an applicant cannot submit using grants.gov, the applicant must follow the information contained in the application package for requesting to submit hard copies. Please note that requests should be made at least 2 weeks before the submission deadline. Applicants are strongly encouraged to contact me as the competition manager to discuss a possible request. Applications cannot be submitted by email, and they must be submitted prior to the deadline of 11:59 p.m. on April 4th, 2023. We strongly encourage applicants to submit all narratives and attachments in PDF read-only, non-modifiable format. Any materials provided in other formats may not be compiled directly in the application and can lead to missing information. In order to make sure that applications is submitted on time and correctly, please register as early as possible in grants.gov and start the application process. Do not wait until you have application ready to register. Grants.gov will create a workspace for applicants to submit the pieces of the application over time. If you're already registered in the system for award management, make sure your registration is current. Submit early, a day or more in advance if possible. Should there be any problems with the grants.gov system, submitting early will ensure that the deadline is met. Verify that the submission is okay. Grants.gov will send applicants notification about that the submission was on time and validated. So applicants should make sure that they receive the confirmation and not assume the submission was okay. Please note that if for any reason an application is submitted more than once and validated more than once, the last application submitted will be considered, and previous applications will be considered duplicates and therefore ineligible. Please note that all grantees must have a unique entity identifier and taxpayer identification number in the System for Award Management or SAM. Applicants must also be registered in the System for Award Management at sam.gov, the government's primary registrant database. Be sure to provide your UEI number and the TIN on your application. Maintain an active SAM registration with current information while your application is under review by the department and if you're awarded a grant during the project period. In addition to duplicate applications, there are 3 reasons that why an application may not be eligible. First, all applications received after the published deadline will not be eligible for funding. Applications that do not address the priority will also not be eligible for funding. For example, an application proposing to establish a recreational program for young children with autism will not be eligible, since that is not the purpose of this priority. Please note that applicants that submit ineligible applications will be notified that their application will not be reviewed. The process for making funding decisions is long and complex, and months may go by before the applicant is informed of the status of their application. Applicants who submit ineligible applications are often informed before funding decisions are reached. Here are some additional tips for submitting an application. Pay attention to the maximum funding levels for each grant as contained in the notice. Awards will not be made for amounts higher than the published amounts. Following the recommended organization, page limits, spacing, and font sizes facilitate the application review process, and applications should strongly consider following the recommendations. PDF files make it easier for the system to put together different parts of the application into one application that reviewers can more easily read and follow. While electronic systems such as grants.gov can be frustrating, following the grants.gov submission procedures and tips for applicants found in Section B of the application package can be extremely helpful. As I mentioned at the beginning, this webinar covers highlights of what's contained in the application package and notice inviting applications. You may also contact me by email at carmen.sanchez@ed.gov or by phone at 202-245-6595 with any of your questions. Thank you for your time and attention.